Emma Caldwell stood in the half-lit dining room of the Laurel table, her hands trembling as she clutched a notebook filled with 9 months of dreams. The air smelled of fresh cedar from the custom tables she had sourced from a local carpenter in Asheville, North Carolina. The soft glow of Edison bulbs, hung just the way she had envisioned, cast shadows across the exposed brick walls she had fought to preserve. This was her creation. Her heart poured into every detail, from the handwritten menu to the wildflower centerpieces. At 39, Emma had believed this restaurant, the signature dining experience for the Blue Ridge Haven, a boutique hotel in downtown Asheville, was her chance to leave a mark on the world. But in a single moment, that dream was shattered. Victor Grayson, the hotel's owner, leaned back in a chair, his polished shoes propped on one of her tables. His laugh echoed through the empty space, sharp and dismissive. "Emma, your ideas are uninspired at best." His words cut deeper than she could have imagined. "We're going in a different direction. Pack your office. I need it cleared by tonight." She stood frozen, her notebook slipping slightly in her grip. The restaurant was 2 weeks from its grand opening, and he was firing her. The woman who had spent nearly a year crafting every element of the Laurel table, from its Appalachian-inspired menu to its rustic chic decor, to the marketing campaign that had already drawn buzz from local food critics. Victor waved a hand, as if dismissing a minor inconvenience, and turned his attention to his phone. Emma's mind reeled. She had grown up in a family of Southern cooks, her grandmother's kitchen in rural Georgia, a sanctuary of cast-iron skillets and stories told over simmering pots of collards. Those memories had fueled her 15-year climb through the hospitality industry, from a server in a greasy spoon to a restaurant consultant in Atlanta, and finally to an executive chef in Asheville's vibrant food scene. She had poured that heritage into the Laurel table, designing a storytelling menu where each dish came with a tale of its Appalachian roots. The roasted trout with sorghum glaze was inspired by a Cherokee fisherman her father once knew. The cornbread with honey thyme butter honored her grandmother's recipe, tweaked with herbs from local farms. Every choice was deliberate, a love letter to the mountains and the people who called them home. 10 months ago, when Victor Grayson had approached her, Emma thought she had finally found her place. The Blue Ridge Haven was his passion project, a boutique hotel meant to capture Asheville's artsy, soulful charm. He had courted her with promises of creative freedom, a partnership stake, and her name on the door. "You're the visionary we need," he had said, his smile all charm and confidence. She believed him. She spent sleepless nights sketching floor plans, tasting ingredients with farmers, and training a staff of 20 to embody her vision of elevated Southern comfort. She had even convinced Victor to keep the building's original brick walls, arguing they told a story of Asheville's history. He had nodded, seeming to understand. Now, as she stood in the dining room she had built, his betrayal felt like a theft of her very soul. "Victor, the opening is in 2 weeks," she managed, her voice barely steady. "The staff is trained on my systems. The suppliers are ready. The marketing is live with my concept." He didn't look up from his phone. "My new chef will handle it. Someone with real credentials, not just small-town know-how." The condescension in his tone made her stomach churn. She wanted to scream that her small-town know-how had created the menu he was keeping, the decor he was using, the buzz he was banking on. Instead, she stood silent, watching him scroll as if she were already gone. The irony wasn't lost on her. Everything Victor was calling uninspired: her recipes, her open kitchen design, her staff training he planned to use for the opening. He had waited until she had done the hard work, until the restaurant was nearly complete, to replace her with a celebrity chef from New York, someone whose name would draw investors and headlines. It was calculated, she realized, a move planned from the start. Her contract, which she had signed in a haze of excitement, loomed in her mind. She had skimmed the fine print, trusting Victor's promises. Now she recalled a clause about creative differences allowing termination with minimal notice. "What about my contract?" she asked, already dreading the answer. "Check Section 10, Victor said, his smirk cutting as sharply as his words. "We can end it for creative misalignment. You'll get your last paycheck. That's it." He stood, brushing imaginary dust from his suit, and walked toward the door. "Good luck, Emma. You'll land on your feet somewhere." The door swung shut behind him, leaving her alone in the dining room she had dreamed into existence. She looked around one last time. The table she had chosen to feel like a family gathering. The light fixtures she had spent weeks sourcing from a local glassblower. The open kitchen, designed to let diners see the magic of their meals being crafted. This wasn't just a job. It was her story, her heritage, her love for Asheville woven into every corner. And Victor had stolen it, repackaging her soul under someone else's name. Her chest tightened, a mix of rage and grief threatening to overwhelm her. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own struggles running a small diner through tough times. "You don't let the world break you, Emma," she used to say, her hands floured from kneading dough. "You bake a new dream." As Emma walked to her office to pack, her footsteps echoed in the empty space. She passed the bar, where she had planned to serve cocktails named after Appalachian wildflowers. She passed the chalkboard wall, where she had imagined diners leaving notes about their favorite dishes. Each step felt like a goodbye to a piece of herself. But as she reached the office door, something caught her eye through the front window. Across the street, a faded for lease sign hung in the window of a vacant storefront, its brick facade glowing in the late afternoon sun. She paused, her hand on the doorknob, and felt a flicker of something new. Not hope, not yet, but a spark of defiance. Victor thought he had ended her story. He was wrong. Emma's mind began to race. The storefront was small, nothing like the polished grandeur of the Blue Ridge Haven, but it had character, the kind of raw, authentic charm Victor's hotel could never fake. She imagined a different kind of restaurant, one that didn't need his money or his approval. A place where food told stories, where locals felt like family, where her vision could live on her terms. The idea was reckless, impossible even, with her savings barely enough to cover a lease and her reputation now at risk. But as she stood there, staring across the street, she felt her grandmother's strength rising within her. Victor had taken her dream, but he couldn't take her fire. She would build something new, something better. And when she did, he would see what he had thrown away. She opened her notebook, the pages filled with recipes, sketches, and notes from months of work. Victor owned the paper, the designs, the contracts, but the passion behind them, the knowledge of flavors and stories, the love for this city and its people, those were hers alone. She closed the notebook and slipped it into her bag. The dining room was no longer hers, but the future was. As she stepped outside, the mountain air of Asheville filled her lungs, cool and sharp. She looked at the storefront one more time, and for the first time that day, she smiled. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Emma Caldwell sat on the worn couch in her small Asheville apartment, the weight of Victor Grayson's betrayal pressing against her chest like a stone. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, its steady rhythm a cruel reminder of the hours slipping away since she had been fired from the Laurel Table, the restaurant she had poured her soul into for 9 months. Her notebook, filled with recipes and dreams for the signature dining room at the Blue Ridge Haven, lay unopened on the coffee table. Victor had called her ideas uninspired, stolen her work, and replaced her with a celebrity chef, all while keeping her menu, her decor, and her trained staff for his grand opening just 2 weeks away. The injustice burned, but beneath it, something else flickered, a spark of defiance that refused to be snuffed out. The apartment smelled faintly of sage and lemon, remnants of a recipe test she had done days ago, back when she still believed in Victor's promises. Now, the silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old building. Emma's eyes drifted to the window, where the lights of downtown Asheville glowed against the night sky. She thought of her grandmother, who had run a diner through floods and recessions, her hands steady as she kneaded dough, and told Emma, "The world can take a lot, but it can't take your fire." That fire was all Emma had left now, and she clung to it, even as doubt whispered that she was finished. She replayed Victor's words in her mind. "Small town know-how," he had sneered, as if her 15 years in the hospitality industry, her climb from server to executive chef, meant nothing. He had planned this, she realized, waiting until she had built the Laurel Table from the ground up before discarding her for someone with a shinier resume. The realization stung, but it also clarified something. Victor didn't understand what made her work special. He saw trendy dishes and Instagram-worthy plating, but he missed the heart of it. The stories woven into every recipe, the connection to Asheville's land and people. That heart was still hers, and no contract could take it away. Emma stood and paced the room, her bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. She stopped at the window, gazing down at the street below. Across from the Blue Ridge Haven, the vacant storefront she had noticed earlier that day caught her eye. Its faded, for lease sign seemed to glow in the moonlight, the brick facade whispering possibilities. The space was small, a former bookstore with creaky floors and high ceilings, nothing like the polished elegance of Victor's hotel. But it had soul, the kind of raw charm that couldn't be manufactured. An idea began to form, reckless and exhilarating. What if she opened her own restaurant? Right there, across the street. What if she took everything Victor had dismissed and turned it into something undeniable? The thought was terrifying. Her savings were modest, barely enough to cover a lease, let alone equipment and staff. Her reputation, already bruised by Victor's public dismissal, could be destroyed if she failed. But as she stared at the storefront, she felt a surge of something she hadn't felt in hours. Hope. Not the naive hope of her first meeting with Victor, but a gritty, stubborn hope born of survival. She could build something new, something that didn't need his money or his approval. A place where food told stories, where locals gathered like family, where her vision could breathe free. She imagined a name, Ember, a nod to the fire that still burned within her, a promise of warmth and light. Emma grabbed her phone and texted Rachel Harper, her best friend and a food writer for Asheville Eats. "Coffee tomorrow? Need to talk." Rachel's reply came instantly. 8 a.m., Bean and Branch. What's up? Emma smiled, the first real smile since Victor's laugh had echoed through the Laurel table. Rachel had been covering Asheville's food scene for a decade, her sharp wit and deep love for the city making her a trusted voice. She had been one of the first to champion Emma's work on the Laurel table, texting her late-night ideas for articles and hashtags. If anyone could help her make sense of this crazy idea, it was Rachel. The next morning, the air was crisp with the scent of pine and espresso as Emma walked into Bean and Branch, a cozy cafe tucked off Biltmore Avenue. Rachel was already there, her auburn hair pulled into a messy bun, her laptop open to a draft review. "You look like you've been through a war," Rachel said, pushing a latte toward Emma. "Spill." Emma took a deep breath and told her everything. Victor's betrayal, the stolen designs, the celebrity chef, the vacant storefront. As she spoke, her voice grew steadier, the spark of defiance flaring brighter. "I keep thinking about that space across the street," she said, stirring her latte absently. "It's the perfect size. The rent would be a fraction of Victor's. I could open something real, Rachel, something that's mine." Rachel's eyes widened, a slow grin spreading across her face. "You're talking about going head-to-head with your ex-boss? In 2 weeks?" She leaned forward, her voice low with excitement. "That's not just bold, Emma. That's revolutionary." She pulled out her phone and started typing notes. "Picture this. A pop-up restaurant, small but mighty, right under Victor's nose. You use everything he threw away, your recipes, your heart, your connection to the city, and you make him regret ever crossing you." Emma laughed, the sound surprising her. For the first time since Victor's dismissal, she felt alive, as if the fog of despair was lifting. They spent an hour sketching ideas. Ember would be different from the Laurel table's upscale polish. It would change its menu every 6 weeks, showcasing Appalachian ingredients from local farms. It would have an open kitchen where diners could watch chefs work and hear the stories behind each dish. And it would host dinner theater nights, where Emma and her team would perform live cooking demos tied to mountain folklore, blending food with Asheville's storytelling tradition. "You're not just opening a restaurant," Rachel said, her eyes shining. "You're starting a movement, and I'm going to make sure everyone in the city knows about it." Emma left the cafe with a fire in her chest. The risks were enormous, be betting her savings, her reputation, everything. But the alternative was letting Victor's betrayal define her. She thought of her grandmother, who had rebuilt her diner after a fire, serving coffee and courage to her neighbors. "You don't need permission to shine," she used to say. Emma didn't need Victor's permission either. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number on the "for lease" sign. A woman answered, her voice warm but cautious. This is Clara Thompson. You're interested in the storefront? Emma took a deep breath. Yes. I want to turn it into a restaurant. Can we meet today? As she hung up, Emma looked across the street at the Blue Ridge Haven, its sleek facade gleaming in the morning light. Victor thought he had won, that his money and connections could erase her. But he had underestimated her. He saw a small-town chef. She saw a legacy of resilience, rooted in the mountains and the people she loved. Ember was more than a restaurant. It was a declaration. Her story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And when Victor saw what she built, he would know he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Emma Caldwell stood in the middle of the empty storefront, the scent of dust and old books lingering in the air. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows, casting golden streaks across the scuffed hardwood floors of what had once been a bookstore in downtown Asheville, North Carolina. Now, it was her battlefield. Just across the street loomed the Blue Ridge Haven, Victor Grayson's boutique hotel where her stolen dream, the Laurel Table, was being polished for its grand opening in 10 days. Emma had signed a 3-month lease on this space the day before, betting everything, her savings, her reputation, her heart in turning it into Ember, a pop-up restaurant that would prove Victor wrong. The task was daunting. The timeline impossible. But as she traced her fingers along the exposed brick wall, she felt a fire kindling within her. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming her soul. The storefront was a far cry from the sleek elegance of the Laurel Table. Its high ceilings were marred by water stains, and the back room, which would become the kitchen, was a tangle of outdated wiring and chipped tiles. But to Emma, it was perfect. The imperfections told a story, much like the Appalachian recipes she planned to serve. She envisioned communal tables where strangers would share stories, an open kitchen where diners could watch the magic unfold, and walls adorned with local art that celebrated Asheville's quirky spirit. Ember would be a place where food wasn't just consumed but experienced, where every dish carried the weight of the mountains and the hands that grew its ingredients. The idea was exhilarating, but the reality was sobering. She had 10 days to transform this shell into a restaurant, and the odds were stacked against her. Emma's first call was to Miguel Torres, her former sous chef at the Laurel Table. Miguel had been her right hand for months, his quiet precision balancing her creative chaos. When he heard Victor had fired her, he quit in solidarity, refusing to work for a man who valued flash over substance. "I'm in," he said over the phone, his voice steady with conviction. "Tell me where and when." Emma's throat tightened with gratitude. Miguel wasn't just a chef. He was family, someone who understood her vision of food as a bridge between people. By noon, he was at the storefront, his sleeves rolled up, sketching a layout for the kitchen with a pencil he kept tucked behind his ear. Next, Emma reached out to 3 other staff members from the Laurel Table who had grown frustrated with Victor's micromanaging and disdain for their input. There was Lena, a line cook with a knack for bold flavors. Jamal, a server whose warmth made every guest feel at home. And Sarah, a prep cook who could turn humble ingredients into art. They arrived one by one, their faces a mix of excitement and disbelief as Emma outlined her plan. "We're opening in 10 days, she said, her voice firm despite the knot in her stomach. "It's going to be tight, but we're building something real. Are you with me?" Their nods were unanimous, their eyes alight with the same defiance that burned in her. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was theirs. The financial reality was brutal. Emma's savings, carefully built over years of late nights and side gigs, would cover the lease, basic equipment, and enough ingredients for a soft opening. But there was no margin for error. If Ember failed, she'd be starting over, her career in Asheville's tight-knit food scene effectively over. She pushed the thought aside and focused on what she could control. Her years in the industry had taught her how to stretch a dollar. She negotiated with a local equipment supplier for secondhand stoves and refrigerators, promising to feature their name in Ember's marketing. She sourced tables from a nearby carpenter who agreed to a payment plan, moved by her passion for the project. Every deal was a small victory, a reminder that she wasn't alone. Emma's most inspired move was a partnership with a community garden just outside Asheville. The garden, run by a collective of urban farmers, grew heirloom vegetables and herbs that would give Ember's dishes a distinct flavor. In exchange for ingredients at cost, Emma promised to donate a portion of profits to their youth gardening program. The garden's leader, a wiry woman named Marla, clasped Emma's hand after their meeting. "You're doing something good here," she said, her eyes crinkling with approval. "We're rooting for you." The words landed like a balm on Emma's frayed nerves. This was what Victor never understood. Food wasn't just a product. It was a web of relationships, a way to nurture a community. As the days blurred into a frenzy of activity, Emma and her team worked from dawn to dusk. Miguel and Lena hammered out a menu, testing recipes like smoked sweet potato bisque and cornbread-crusted chicken, each dish a nod to Appalachian traditions with a modern twist. Sarah and Jamal scrubbed floors and painted walls, transforming the bookstore's musty interior into a warm, inviting space. Rachel Harper, Emma's best friend and a food writer for Asheville Eats, stopped by with coffee and ideas for a social media campaign. "You're not just opening a restaurant," Rachel said, snapping photos of the team at work. "You're telling a story. Let's make sure everyone hears it." She suggested a hashtag #EmberGlow to capture the warmth and resilience of Emma's vision. Clara Thompson, the landlord, visited on the third day, her skeptical gaze softening as she watched the team's progress. "You're really doing this," she said, almost to herself. Emma nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "I have to. It's not just about me." Clara's lips twitched into a smile, and she handed Emma a small box of vintage mason jars. "For your tables," she said. "My mother used to can peaches in these. They belong in a place like this." The gesture, small but heartfelt, reminded Emma why she was fighting. Ember wasn't just a restaurant. It was a home for stories, for people, for the soul of Asheville. Late at night, when the team had gone home, Emma sat alone in the half-finished space, her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. The weight of what she was attempting pressed down on her. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own battles with a diner that barely broke even. "You build with what you have," she used to say, her voice rough but kind. Emma had so little money, time, certainty, but she had her team, her city, her fire. She looked across the street at the Blue Ridge Haven, its windows aglow with preparations for Victor's opening. He thought he had broken her, that his wealth and connections could erase her. But he didn't know the strength of a woman who had been raised on grit and love. Emma stood and walked to the front window, pressing her hand against the cool glass. The storefront was still a work in progress, but it was hers. Every nail, every recipe, every sleepless night was a step towards something Victor could never steal. Ember was rising from the ashes of her betrayal, and it would shine brighter than anything he could build. She turned back to the room, her resolve hardening. 10 days. She had 10 days to make him see what he had thrown away. And she would. Emma Caldwell stood at the heart of Ember, her hands dusted with flour from a morning of recipe testing. The storefront in downtown Asheville, North Carolina, once a dusty bookstore, was beginning to hum with life. The scent of freshly painted walls mingled with the earthy aroma of herbs from the community garden, their delicate leaves now tucked into jars on the counter. Across the street, the Blue Ridge Haven loomed, its sleek facade a reminder of Victor Grayson's betrayal. He had stolen her work on the Laurel Table, fired her just days before its opening, and dismissed her vision as uninspired. But here, in this raw, unfinished space, Emma was crafting something Victor could never touch, a restaurant that wasn't just a business, but a love letter to Asheville's people and land. Ember was taking shape, and with only 7 days until its daring launch, Emma's heart beat with a mix of fear and fierce pride. The vision for Ember had crystallized in the sleepless nights since her firing. Unlike the Laurel Table's polished luxury, Ember would be a living, breathing reflection of Appalachian heritage. Its menu would shift every 6 weeks, each dish a celebration of the season's bounty: wild ramps in spring, heirloom tomatoes in summer, chestnuts in fall. Emma drew inspiration from the Cherokee traditions she had studied, from the farmers she met at dawn markets, from the stories her grandmother told over steaming pots in Georgia. A dish of roasted beets with sorghum vinaigrette wasn't just food. It was a nod to the mountain soil and the hands that tended it. A dessert of apple stack cake, layered with spiced preserves, carried the warmth of family gatherings. Every choice was deliberate, a way to honor the past while inviting diners to feel part of something timeless. The design of Ember was just as intentional. Emma had envisioned an open kitchen, where the clatter of pans and the sizzle of butter would be part of the experience, not hidden behind walls. She wanted diners to see Miguel Torres, her sous chef, slicing vegetables with reverence, or Lena, her line cook, coaxing bold flavors from simple ingredients. Communal tables, crafted from reclaimed wood, would encourage strangers to share stories over plates of cornbread and smoked trout. The walls, still bare but soon to be hung with local art, would showcase Asheville's creative spirit paintings of misty mountains, woven tapestries, photographs of farmers' hands. Clara Thompson, the landlord, had donated her mother's vintage mason jars, now filled with wildflowers, their soft glow transforming the space into something that felt like home. Emma's team was the heartbeat of this vision. Miguel, Lena, Jamal, and Sarah had left the Laurel table to join her, their loyalty a quiet rebellion against Victor's arrogance. They worked with a shared purpose, their laughter and sweat filling the space as they tested recipes and arranged tables. Miguel, ever the perfectionist, spent hours refining a recipe for buttermilk biscuits, insisting they match the flaky perfection of his abuela's. Jamal, with his gift for connection, suggested a chalkboard where diners could leave messages, a nod to Emma's original plan for the Laurel table. Sarah, quiet but fierce, sourced pottery from a local artisan, ensuring every plate told a story. Together, they were building more than a restaurant, they were building a community. Rachel Harper, Emma's best friend and a food writer for Asheville Eats, was the spark that would carry Ember's story to the world. She arrived one afternoon with a notebook and a plan, her eyes bright with excitement. "We're not just selling food," Rachel said, snapping a photo of Emma arranging wildflowers. "We're selling a feeling. Ember Glow is going to light up this city." Her social media campaign was a masterclass in mystery, teasing Ember's warmth and authenticity without revealing too much. A post of Miguel's hands kneading dough, captioned, "Born from the Mountains," went viral among Asheville's foodies. Another, showing the open kitchen under construction, read, "Where stories are cooked fresh." Rachel's posts didn't mention Victor or the Laurel table, but the contrast was clear. Ember was real, rooted, alive. Emma's partnership with the community garden deepened her commitment to sustainability. Marla, the garden's leader, delivered crates of herbs and vegetables, each one a testament to Asheville's fertile land. In return, Emma planned to host harvest workshops where diners could learn to preserve the season's bounty, pickling ramps, canning peaches, drying herbs. The workshops weren't just a gimmick, they were a way to connect people to the land, to teach skills that had sustained generations. Marla, watching Emma unpack a crate of zucchini, said, "You're giving this city something it's been missing." The words landed like a gift, reminding Emma that Ember was bigger than her fight with Victor. It was a chance to heal, to build, to belong. The emotional weight of what she was attempting hit Emma hardest at night, when the team had gone home and the storefront was quiet. She sat on a stool in the half-finished kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of mint tea, the steam curling like a prayer. Doubt crept in, whispering that she was foolish to risk everything, her savings, her career, her heart, and a dream that might fail. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own doubts running a diner through hard times. "You don't build for certainty," she used to say, her voice steady as she stirred soup. "You build for love." Emma loved this city, its people, its stories. That love was her foundation, stronger than any fear. She walked to the front window, looking across at the Blue Ridge Haven. Workers bustled inside, preparing for Victor's opening, their movements polished and precise. Victor thought luxury was enough, that a famous chef and a big budget could outshine her. But he didn't understand what made a place special. It wasn't money or prestige. It was connection, the way a meal could make you feel seen, the way a room could feel like home. Ember would offer that, not just to diners, but to the farmers, artists, and neighbors who were part of its story. Emma's vision was a tapestry, woven from the threads of Asheville's past and present, and no one could steal its heart. As she turned back to the room, Emma felt a quiet resolve settle over her. The open kitchen, still a work in progress, gleamed with possibility. The communal tables, stacked in the corner, waited to hold laughter and stories. The mason jars, lined up on the counter, glowed with the promise of beauty. Ember was more than a restaurant. It was a declaration of who she was, a woman shaped by love, loss, and the mountains. Victor had taken her first dream, but he had given her something greater, the chance to build something true. She set her mug down and picked up a notebook, jotting ideas for the harvest workshops. 7 days. She had 7 days to make Asheville see what she saw. And she would. Emma Caldwell's hands shook as she hammered a nail into the wall of Ember, the pop-up restaurant she was racing to open in downtown Asheville, North Carolina. The air was thick with the scent of sawdust and fresh paint, a chaotic symphony of creation in what had been a vacant bookstore just days ago. Across the street, the Blue Ridge Haven gleamed, its polished windows reflecting the morning sun as workers prepared the Laurel Table for its grand opening in 5 days. Victor Grayson, the hotel's owner, had fired Emma, stolen her vision for his restaurant, and dismissed her as uninspired. Now, with her savings and reputation on the line, Emma was betting everything on a daring plan. To open Ember the same night as Victor's debut, stealing his spotlight with a restaurant that pulsed with the heart of Asheville. The clock was ticking, and every second felt like a pulse in her veins. The decision to accelerate Ember's opening had come late the previous night, as Emma stood in the half-finished kitchen, surrounded by crates of vegetables from the community garden. She had planned to launch a week after the Laurel Table, giving her team time to perfect their systems. But watching the flurry of activity across the street, valets rehearsing, banners being hung, realized playing it safe wasn't enough. Victor thought he had crushed her, that his wealth and new celebrity chef could bury her dreams. She wouldn't let him. A preview supper, held the night before Ember's official opening, would invite food critics and influencers to witness the cooking process, a bold move to showcase the authenticity Victor's sterile luxury could never match. It was reckless, but Emma felt her grandmother's voice in her bones. When the world pushes, you push back harder. The storefront was a hive of activity. Miguel Torres, her sous chef, was testing a recipe for smoked trout with wild ramp pesto, his brow furrowed as he adjusted the seasoning. Lena, the line cook, sanded a communal table, her arms moving with fierce determination. Jamal, the server, hung local artwork, each piece a vibrant ode to Asheville's mountains. Sarah, the prep cook, arranged Clara Thompson's vintage mason jars, their wildflower bouquets catching the light. The team worked with a shared fire, their loyalty to Emma a quiet defiance of Victor's betrayal. They had left the Laurel Table to join her, risking their own livelihoods for a dream that might fail. Their trust was both a gift and a weight, pushing Emma to keep going even when exhaustion clawed at her. Transforming the space was a logistical nightmare. The kitchen, still a patchwork of secondhand equipment, needed wiring upgrades to handle the stoves. Emma had negotiated with a local supplier for a discount, promising to feature their name in Ember's app, a new tool she was developing to let diners reserve seats and learn about ingredients. The app was Rachel Harper's idea, her latest stroke of genius as Ember's unofficial marketing guru. Rachel, a food writer for Asheville Eats, had spent the morning photographing the team, her posts on Ember Glow building buzz without revealing the opening date. "This is going to be a story," she said, her eyes gleaming as she snapped a shot of Emma arranging herbs. "You're not just cooking food, you're cooking courage." Emma's partnership with the community garden was proving vital. Marla, the garden's leader, delivered crates of heirloom carrots and sage, her smile a reminder of why Emma was fighting. In return, Emma was planning harvest workshops, where diners would learn to preserve the season's bounty, a nod to Appalachian traditions. The workshops were a risk extra work for a team already stretched thin, but they embodied Ember's mission, to connect people to the land and each other. Marla's words echoed in Emma's mind. "You're giving this city something it's been missing." That something was connection. The kind Victor's upscale restaurant, with its starched linens and imported wines, could never offer. The emotional toll of the race was relentless. Late at night, when the team had gone home, Emma sat on a stool in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of a refrigerator. Doubt crept in, whispering that she was foolish to challenge Victor, that her savings would run dry, that Asheville's food scene would forget her. She thought of her grandmother, who had rebuilt her diner after a flood, serving coffee and hope to her neighbors. "You don't wait for perfect," she used to say. her hands rough from years of work. You build with what's in front of you. Emma looked around at the half-finished space, the tables, the art, the jarcined, saw not chaos but possibility. The turning point came when Victor's assistant, a young man in a crisp suit, slipped into Ember one afternoon, pretending to browse while clearly spying. Emma caught his eye, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and pride. She walked over, holding a sample of Lena's cornbread with honey thyme butter. "For you," she said, her voice steady. "Tell Mr. Grayson we wish him luck." The assistant flushed, took the cornbread, and left without a word. The encounter was small, but it electrified Emma. Victor was watching. He was worried. For the first time, she felt the balance of power shift, however slightly. Ember wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a threat. Rachel's social media campaign was gaining traction. A post of the open kitchen, captioned, "Where the mountains meet your plate," had been shared hundreds of times. Another, showing Sarah arranging wildflowers, read, "Beauty in the details." The #EmberGlow hashtag was trending among Asheville's foodies, with locals speculating about the secret restaurant across from the Blue Ridge Haven. Rachel's strategy was deliberate, building anticipation without revealing the preview supper. "Let them wonder," she told Emma, grinning. "By the time we open, they'll be begging for a seat." Emma marveled at her friend's confidence, drawing strength from it as the deadline loomed. As the 5th day dawned, Emma stood at the front window, watching workers hang a banner for the Laurel Table's opening. The sight stirred a pang of loss for the dream Victor had stolen, but it also fueled her resolve. Ember was different. Its open kitchen would invite diners into the process. Its menu would tell stories of the land. Its harvest workshops would teach skills that lasted beyond a meal. Victor's restaurant was a monument to his ego. Ember was a celebration of Asheville's soul. She turned back to her team, their faces tired but determined. "We're doing this," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "Not for him. For us. For this city." The race against time was more than a logistical challenge. It was a test of Emma's belief in herself, in her team, in the power of a vision rooted in love. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own impossible odds with a stubborn heart. Ember was her legacy, a fire built from the ashes of betrayal. 5 days. She had 5 days to make Victor see what he had thrown away, and she would. Emma Caldwell stood in the open kitchen of Ember, her heart pounding as the first guest stepped through the door. The air was alive with the scent of roasted chestnuts and fresh sage, the sizzle of pans mingling with the soft hum of conversation. The former bookstore in downtown Asheville, North Carolina, had been transformed in just 10 days, its exposed brick walls now glowing under the warmth of Edison bulbs, its communal tables adorned with Clara Thompson's vintage mason jars, filled with wildflowers. Across the street, the Blue Ridge Haven sparkled, its grand opening for the Laurel Table unfolding with valet service and flashing cameras. Victor Grayson had fired Emma, stolen her vision, and called her uninspired. But tonight, Ember's preview supper was her answer, a bold, intimate event that invited Asheville to witness her truth. As the room filled with food critics, influencers, and locals, Emma felt a surge of pride and terror. This was the night that would define her. The preview supper was a gamble, born from Emma's decision to open Ember the same night as Victor's debut. Unlike the Laurel Table's exclusive gala, Ember's event was open, raw, and real. Diners sat at long tables, watching Miguel Torres, her sous chef, carve a whole duck with precision, or Lena, her line cook, plate a dish of cornbread-crusted chicken with wild ramp pesto. The open kitchen, Emma's pride, broke down barriers, letting guests see the sweat and soul behind each dish. Jamal, the server, moved through the room with easy warmth, sharing stories of the ingredient show, The Beats, came from Marla's community garden, how the sorghum glaze echoed Cherokee traditions. Sarah, the prep cook, arranged desserts, her quiet focus a steady anchor in the chaos. The team was a family, their loyalty to Emma a quiet rebellion against Victor's betrayal. Rachel Harper, Emma's best friend and a food writer for Asheville Eats, was the architect of the night's buzz. Her #EmberGlow campaign had set social media ablaze, with cryptic posts teasing Asheville's best-kept secret. Now, She live-streamed the supper, her phone capturing Miguel's knife work. Emma's smile as she explained a recipe, the laughter of diners sharing plates. "This is where the mountains meet your heart," she captioned a video, and within minutes, it was shared across the city. Rachel's Chef's Journal blog, launched on Ember's new mobile app, offered behind-the-scenes stories, deepening the connection with viewers. "You're not just eating," she told a critic from the Asheville Citizen. Times, her eyes shining. "You're part of something." The words resonated, drawing nods from guests who felt like they belonged. The room was electric. A food critic from Bon Appetit leaned forward, scribbling notes as Emma described the apple stack cake, its layers a tribute to her grandmother's Georgia kitchen. A local influencer, her phone flashing, asked Lena about the heirloom carrots, sparking a conversation that felt like a fireside chat. The harvest workshops, Emma's plan to teach diners to preserve seasonal ingredients, were already generating whispers, with guests asking how to sign up. The app, a last-minute addition, let diners reserve future seats and vote on menu items, its interface glowing with photos of the community garden. Every detail, from the pottery plates to the chalkboard where guests left messages, was a testament to Emma's vision. A restaurant that didn't just serve food but wove a community together. Across the street, the Laurel Table's opening was a spectacle of wealth luxury cars, red carpets, a string quartet. But as the night wore on, Emma noticed something extraordinary. Two of Victor's investors, people she had met during her time at the Blue Ridge Haven, slipped into Ember, their tailored suits out of place among the casual crowd. One, a restaurateur named Eleanor Vance, sampled the smoked sweet potato bisque and shook her head in awe. "This is what I thought the Laurel Table would be," she said, her voice low but firm. "You were the heart of it, Emma." The words landed like a balm. Healing wounds Victor had left. The other investor, a tech entrepreneur, asked about the app, his interest genuine. Their presence was a crack in Victor's facade, proof that Emma's vision was resonating where his was not. The emotional weight of the night hit Emma as she plated a dessert of blackberry cobbler with lavender cream. Her hands trembled, not from exhaustion but from the realization that she had done it. She had taken a vacant storefront, a broken dream, and a team of believers, and built something extraordinary. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own battles with a diner that barely survived. "You don't need the world's approval," she used to say. Her hands floured from kneading dough. "You need your own." Tonight Emma had both her own conviction and the city's embrace. The laughter, the clink of glasses, the scribbling of critics' pensit was validation, not just of her work, but of her worth. Rachel's live stream was a wildfire. Comments poured in, locals begging for reservations, foodies from Charlotte and Atlanta asking when they could visit. The app crashed briefly from the surge of traffic, a problem Rachel fixed with a laugh and a call to her tech-savvy brother. By 9 p.m., Ember had booked solid for its first 2 weeks, a feat Rachel announced to the room, sparking cheers. Emma caught Miguel's eye across the kitchen, his nod a silent acknowledgement of their shared triumph. Lena, wiping sweat from her brow, grinned as a critic praised her pesto. Jamal and Sarah, clearing plates, moved with a quiet pride. This was their victory, too, a testament to the family they had become. The night's climax came when Emma spotted Victor through the window, standing on the sidewalk, his phone pressed to his ear. His face, usually smug, was taut with agitation. He looked at Ember, his eyes narrowing as he took in the packed tables, the glowing lights, the energy that outshone his gala. For a moment, their gazes met, and Emma felt a jolt of power. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She smiled, a small, defiant curve of her lips, and turned back to her work. Victor's assistant had spied on them days ago, but this was different. Victor himself was witnessing her rise, and it was unraveling him. As the last guests left, leaving notes on the chalkboard, "Best meal ever. Thank you, Ember." Emma stood in the quiet kitchen, her team gathered around her. The air was warm, the scent of herbs lingering. She looked at them, Miguel, Lena, Jamal, Sarah. Rachel felt a gratitude that brought tears to her eyes. "We did it," she said, her voice breaking. "We showed them who we are." The room was silent for a moment, then erupted in hugs and laughter. Across the street, The Laurel Table's lights dimmed, its gala winding down, but Ember's glow was just beginning. This was the night that changed everything. Not just for Emma, but for Asheville. And Victor, watching from the shadows, knew he had made a terrible mistake. Emma Caldwell stood behind the counter of Ember's open kitchen, her hands steady as she plated a dish of roasted trout with wild ramp pesto. The air was warm with the scent of fresh herbs and baking cornbread, the clatter of plates mingling with the laughter of diners packed into the former bookstore in downtown Asheville, North Carolina. It was a Thursday night, 1 week after Ember's triumphant preview supper, and the pop-up restaurant was alive. Its communal tables filled with locals and foodies drawn by the number Emberglow buzz. Across the street, the Blue Ridge Haven stood, its sleek facade masking the struggles of the Laurel Table, Victor Grayson's restaurant built on Emma's stolen vision. Victor had fired her, called her uninspired, and replaced her with a celebrity chef. But Ember's success was undeniably a beacon of authenticity that was rewriting Asheville's culinary story. Tonight, as Emma worked, she felt a quiet power, a certainty that she had reclaimed her place. Then the door opened, and Victor walked in. The room seemed to pause, the hum of conversation faltering as heads turned. Victor Grayson, in his tailored suit and polished shoes, looked out of place among Ember's rustic charmets, reclaimed wood tables, mason jars glowing with wildflowers, walls hung with local art. His face, once smug with confidence, was tight with something new: desperation. Emma's heart skipped, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. She had dreamed of this, of Victor seeing what she had built from the ashes of his betrayal. Now he was here, and the air crackled with the unspoken history between them. Miguel Torres, her sous chef, glanced at her from the stove, his eyes questioning. Lena, the line cook, paused mid-chop. Jamal and Sarah, moving through the dining room, slowed, their gazes fixed on Emma. Even Rachel Harper, live-streaming the night for Asheville Eats, lowered her phone, sensing the shift. This was no ordinary visit. Emma kept working, her hands deliberate as she drizzled sorghum glaze over the trout. She wouldn't let Victor disrupt her rhythm, not here, not now. He approached the counter, his steps hesitant, and stopped just feet from the open kitchen. "Emma," he said, his voice low but strained, "we need to talk." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Diners watched, forks poised, their curiosity palpable. Emma met his gaze, her eyes steady, and saw a man unmoored. The arrogance that had defined him when he fired her was gone, replaced by a flicker of panic. She set the plate down, wiped her hands on her apron, and said, "I'm busy, Victor. We're in the middle of service." Her voice was calm, but it carried a strength that silenced the room. Victor's jaw tightened, but he pressed on. "I made a mistake," he said, his words spilling out faster now. "A huge mistake. The Laurel Table isn't working. The chef, the concept, it's not what I thought. But you, Emma, you're the key. I want you back. A partnership. 50-50. You run both restaurants, keep Ember here, redesign the Laurel Table the way you wanted. Your name on both doors. Full creative control." The offer was staggering. Everything Emma had dreamed of when she first signed on with Victor 10 months ago. It was a chance to reclaim her original vision, to erase the humiliation of her firing, to secure her future with resources she could only imagine. But as she looked at him, she felt no temptation, only clarity. She thought of the journey that had brought her here. The nights of doubt in her apartment, the spark of defiance when she saw the "For Lease" sign, the sweat and laughter of her team Miguel, Lena, Jamal, Sarah as they built Ember from nothing. She thought of the community garden, where Marla's vegetables gave her dishes soul, and the harvest workshops she was planning to teach diners to preserve the land's bounty. She thought of Rachel's Emberglow campaign, turning Ember into a movement, and the chef's journal blog on their app, sharing stories that connected diners to Asheville's heart. Ember wasn't just a restaurant, it was a family, a mission, a testament to what happened when you built with love instead of greed. Victor's offer, generous as it seemed, was a trap-a-gilded cage that would tie her to his ego, his control. Emma glanced at her team, their faces a mix of pride and defiance. Miguel's nod was subtle but firm, a reminder of their shared fight. Rachel, her phone now raised again, was capturing every word, the live stream buzzing with comments from viewers who sensed the drama. The diners, some of whom knew Emma's story, watched with bated breath, their support a silent force. She turned back to Victor, her voice even but resolute. "I appreciate the offer," she said, "but I'm not interested." The words landed like a thunderclap, and Victor's face crumpled, a mix of shock and desperation. "Then what do you want?" he asked, his voice rising. "Name your price. I'll sell you the Laurel Table outright if that's what it takes." Emma smiled, a small, unshakable curve of her lips. "There's nothing you have that I want, Victor. You taught me something when you fired me. The real value isn't in your money or your hotel. It's in the vision, the people, the heart, and those belong to me now." The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Victor stared, his hands clenching, then turned and walked out, the door swinging shut behind him. The diners erupted in murmurs, some clapping softly, their admiration clear. Rachel's live stream exploded, comments flooding in. "She's a legend. Ember forever." Miguel grinned, Lena laughed, and Jamal whispered, "That's our boss." The moment was electric, a turning point that marked Emma's transformation from victim to victor. As service resumed, Emma felt a weight lift. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own battles with a diner that barely survived. "You don't need their permission to shine," she used to say, her hands rough from years of work. Emma didn't need Victor's. She had built Ember with her team, her city, her soul. The confrontation wasn't just a rejection of his offer, it was a declaration of her independence, a reclaiming of her narrative. She launched a mentorship program that night, inspired by the moment, to guide young chefs who, like her, had been underestimated. The program would teach them to cook, yes, but also to believe in their worth, to build something true. Across the street, the Laurel Table's lights flickered, its gala long over, its tables half empty despite the hype. Ember, meanwhile, was booked solid, its app crashing again from reservation requests. Rachel's blog post, titled "The Night Asheville Chose Heart," went viral, cementing Ember's place in the city's story. Emma plated another dish, her hands steady now, her heart full. Victor's plea had been his surrender, but her victory was bigger than him. It was the laughter of her team, the trust of her diners, the glow of a dream that no one could steal. She looked out at Ember, its tables alive with stories, and knew this was only the beginning. Emma Caldwell leaned against the counter of Ember's open kitchen, the warm scent of baking apple stack cake filling the air. The former bookstore in downtown Asheville, North Carolina, pulsed with life, its communal tables packed with diners sharing plates of smoked trout and cornbread-crusted chicken. The exposed brick walls, adorned with local art, glowed under the soft light of Edison bulbs, and Clara Thompson's vintage mason jars, filled with wildflowers, sparkled like stars. It was a crisp November evening, 3 weeks after Emma's confrontation with Victor Grayson, the man who had fired her from the Blue Ridge Haven, stolen her vision for the Laurel Table, and called her uninspired. That night, when Victor begged her to return, she had refused, choosing the heart of Ember over his empty promises. Now, as Ember's fame soared and the Laurel Table crumbled, Emma stood at the center of a revolution, her heart swelling with gratitude and a quiet, unshakable pride. Ember had become Asheville's darling, a beacon of authenticity in a city that cherished its soul. The preview supper, a daring gamble that coincided with the Laurel Table's opening, had set the stage, but it was the weeks that followed that cemented Ember's place in the city's story. Rachel Harper's Emberglow campaign had ignited a firestorm of attention, her live streams and Chef's Journal blog on Ember's mobile app drawing thousands of followers. A post captioned, "Where the Mountains Feed Your Heart," went viral, shared by foodies from Raleigh to Nashville. The app, a last-minute innovation, let diners reserve seats, vote on seasonal menu items, and read stories about the community garden's heirloom vegetables, forging a bond that went beyond a meal. When Bon Appetit named Ember one of America's game-changer restaurants, Rachel pinned the article to the chalkboard, where diners added notes like, "Proud to call this home," and "Emma, you're our hero." The demand was staggering. Ember's tables were booked solid for 3 months, with a waiting list that grew daily. The harvest workshops, where Emma taught diners to pickle ramps and peaches, were so popular that she had to add weekend sessions, each one filled with locals eager to connect with the land. The workshops weren't just classes, they were celebrations, with laughter, music, and stories shared over mason jars of iced tea. Marla, the community garden's leader, joined one session, her eyes misty as she watched a young mother teach her daughter to seal a jar. "You're building more than a restaurant," she told Emma, her voice thick. "You're building a legacy." The words landed deep, a reminder that Ember was a tapestry woven from Asheville's people farmers, artisans, neighbors who believed in Emma's vision. The team was the soul of that vision. Miguel Torres, her sous chef, had become a co-creator, his precision elevating dishes like roasted beet salad, with sorghum vinaigrette. Lena, the line cook, poured her boldness into every plate, her wild ramp pesto a critic's favorite. Jamal, the server, wove warmth through the room, turning strangers into friends. Sarah, the prep cook, crafted desserts with a quiet artistry, her blackberry cobbler a nod to her Appalachian roots. They had risked everything to leave the Laurel table, and now they shared in Ember's triumph, their laughter and sweat the heartbeat of the space. Emma had given each a small ownership stake, a promise that this was their home, too. "We're not just a team," she told them one night, her voice breaking. "We're family." Across the street, the Laurel table was fading. Victor's celebrity chef, lured by promises of fame, couldn't deliver the soul Emma's vision had provided. Reviews were tepid, praising the decor but calling the food soulless. Tables sat empty on weeknights, and rumors swirled of investor discontent. By mid-November, the Blue Ridge Haven announced the restaurant's closure, the space to be converted into guest suites and a grab-and-go market. The news, reported in the Asheville Business Journal, was a quiet vindication, but Emma felt no glee. Victor's failure was his own, a consequence of prioritizing prestige over heart. Ember's success, on the other hand, was a shared victory, built on love and trust. The ripple effects were profound. Local farmers, who supplied Ember's seasonal ingredients, reported increased demand, their heirloom crops now featured in markets across the region. Artisans, whose pottery and paintings graced Ember's tables and walls, saw their businesses grow, their work celebrated in Rachel's blog posts. The community garden, bolstered by Emma's profit sharing, expanded its youth program, teaching kids to grow food and dream big. Ember wasn't just feeding Asheville. It was nourishing its economy, its culture, its future. A local professor, dining one night, called it a model for sustainable hospitality. And Emma blushed, humbled by the weight of her impact. Emotionally, Emma was in a new place. The confrontation with Victor had been a turning point, freeing her from the shadow of his betrayal. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own struggles with a diner that barely survived. "You don't build to prove them wrong," she used to say. Her hands floured from kneading dough. "You build to prove yourself right." Emma had proven herself, not just to Asheville, but to the quiet, doubting voice within her. The mentorship program she launched after Victor's plea was thriving, with young chefs like Sarah's cousin, a shy teenager, learning to cook and believe in their worth. "You're giving them what I never had," Sarah told her, her eyes shining. The words were a gift, a reminder that Ember's light reached beyond its walls. Rachel's latest innovation was a monthly supper club, where loyal diners enjoyed experimental dishes paired with live music from Asheville's indie bands. The first event, held under string lights in the dining room, featured a venison tartare Emma had dreamed up, its bold flavors sparking cheers. A fiddler played Appalachian tunes, and diners danced between courses, their joy infectious. Rachel live-streamed it, the #EmberGlow hashtag trending nationwide. "This is what dining should be," a critic wrote, and Emma, watching from the kitchen, felt tears prick her eyes. She wasn't just running a restaurant. She was creating memories, moments that would linger in hearts long after the plates were cleared. As she plated a dessert of lavender cream cobbler one night, Emma looked out at Ember's dining room. The laughter, the clink of glasses, the notes on the chalkboard, it was everything she had dreamed of when she first saw the For Lease sign. Victor's failure was a footnote now, a lesson in what happened when you built without soul. Ember, with its open kitchen, its harvest workshops, its supper club, was a star rising, not just in Asheville, but in the national conversation about food and community. She thought of her grandmother's diner, where neighbors found solace in a cup of coffee. Ember was her diner, reimagined for a new generation, a place where people felt seen, valued, loved. Emma stepped outside, the cool November air brushing her skin. Across the street, the Blue Ridge Haven's lights were dim, its restaurant space already being gutted. Ember's glow, though, was unstoppable. Its tables booked, its story spreading. She felt her grandmother's strength in her bones, a legacy of resilience that had carried her here. Ember wasn't just a victory over Victor. It was a premise to her team, her city, herself, that authenticity could change the world. As she turned back to the kitchen, her heart was full. The star was rising, and its light would only grow brighter. Emma Caldwell stood in the teaching kitchen of Ember, her hands cradling a jar of pickled ramps, the tangy scent mingling with the warmth of freshly baked cornbread. The former bookstore in downtown Asheville, North Carolina, had become a sanctuary, its exposed brick walls and communal tables alive with the stories of a city that had embraced her. It was early December, 4 months after Victor Grayson fired her from the Blue Ridge Haven, stole her vision for the Laurel Table, and dismissed her as uninspired. Across the street, the hotel's restaurant space was now a hollow shell, its closure a quiet testament to Victor's failure. Ember, meanwhile, was a radiant force, its number Ember Glow # a national phenomenon, its tables booked through spring. But as Emma looked out at the dining room, glowing with Clara Thompson's mason jars and local art, she realized her journey was no longer about proving Victor wrong. It was about building a legacy that would outlast revenge, a beacon of community and authenticity for Asheville and beyond. Ember's rise had been meteoric, but its true power lay in its roots. The restaurant had signed a 5-year lease, expanding into the adjacent space to create the teaching kitchen where Emma now stood. The new space, with its gleaming counters and shelves of heirloom ingredients, was designed for harvest workshops and her mentorship program, where young chefs learned not just to cook but to dream. The workshops, teaching diners to preserve seasonal bounty, had become a cultural touchstone, drawing families, retirees, and students who left with jars of jam and a deeper connection to the land. Marla, from the community garden, had called them a gift to the future, and Emma felt the weight of that responsibility. Every jar, every recipe, every story was a thread in a tapestry she was weaving for Asheville. The team was the heart of that tapestry. Miguel Torres, now co-executive chef, brought precision and passion to dishes like roasted beet salad with sorghum vinaigrette, his partnership with Emma a cornerstone of Ember's success. Lena, the line cook, infused every plate with boldness, her wild ramp pesto a symbol of her growth. Jamal, the server, turned dining into an act of connection, his warmth making strangers feel like family. Sarah, the prep cook, crafted desserts with quiet artistry, her blackberry cobbler, a love letter to her Appalachian heritage. They had left the Laurel Table to join Emma, risking everything for a dream that had become their own. Each held an ownership stake, a promise that Ember was their home. "We built this together," Emma told them one night, her voice thick with gratitude. "And we'll keep building." Rachel Harper, Ember's marketing genius, had transformed the restaurant into a movement. Her Ember Glow campaign, amplified by the Chef's Journal blog and mobile app, had drawn national attention, with Bon Appetit's Game Changer feature now framed on the wall. The app, where diners reserved seats and voted on seasonal menus, was a lifeline, its stories about farmers and artisans forging a bond that transcended a meal. Rachel's monthly supper club, pairing experimental dishes with live music, had become Asheville's hottest ticket, the last one featuring a venison tartare that sparked standing ovations. "You're changing how people see food," Rachel told Emma, her eyes bright. "Not just here, but everywhere." The words stirred something deep in Emma, a realization that Ember's light was reaching farther than she had dreamed. The community impact was undeniable. Local farmers, whose heirloom crops filled Ember's plates, saw their businesses thrive, their names celebrated in Rachel's blog. Artisans, from potters to painters, gained exposure through Ember's decor, their work now sought after across the region. The community garden, bolstered by Emma's profit sharing, had doubled its youth program, teaching kids to grow food and believe in themselves. A scholarship fund, launched with Asheville's Warren Wilson College, was Emma's latest passion, offering tuition to hospitality students who shared her vision of sustainable, community-driven dining. "You're giving them a chance I never had," Sarah said, her voice soft but fierce. The fund was small, but it was a seed, one Emma hoped would grow into a forest of opportunity. Emotionally, Emma was in a place of profound clarity. Victor's betrayal had been a crucible, forcing her to confront her doubts and discover her strength. His desperate plea, weeks ago, had been a turning point, not because she rejected him, but because she chose herself. She thought of her grandmother, who had run a diner through floods and recessions, her hands rough but steady. "You don't build for applause," she used to say, stirring soup with a wooden spoon. "You build for the ones who come after." Emma was building for them now, for the young chefs in her mentorship program, for the families in her workshops, for the city that had lifted her up. Revenge had been sweet, but legacy was sweeter, a fire that burned steady and true. The decision to stay in Asheville, rather than franchise Ember, was deliberate. Offers had come from investors in Charlotte, Atlanta, even San Francisco, promising wealth and scale. But Emma turned them down, her heart rooted in the mountains. "This is home," she told Rachel one night, the two of them sipping coffee in the teaching kitchen. "I want to get it right here first." Asheville had given her everything, its land, its people, its stories, and she owed it her best. The expanded space, with its teaching kitchen, was her commitment to that promise, a place where the community could gather, learn, and grow. The supper club, the mentorship program, the scholarship fund, they were all part of a vision that went beyond profit, a model for what dining could be when it prioritized heart over hype. As she prepared for a harvest workshop one evening, Emma looked out at the dining room, alive with laughter and clinking glasses. The chalkboard was covered with notes. "Ember is magic. Thank you for this place," each one a testament to what she had built. She thought of the vacant storefront she had seen months ago, a symbol of loss that became a canvas for hope. Victor's failure was a distant memory now. His hotel sold to a chain that erased the Laurel Table's name. Ember, though, was eternal, its glow a reflection of Asheville's soul. She thought of her grandmother's diner, where neighbors found solace in a cup of coffee. Ember was her diner, reimagined, a place where people felt seen, valued, loved. Emma set the jar of ramps down and walked to the window, the cool December air brushing her skin. The Blue Ridge Haven's lights were dim, its restaurant space gone. Ember's glow, though, was unstoppable, its tables booked, its story spreading. She felt her grandmother's strength in her bones, a legacy of resilience that had carried her here. Ember wasn't just a victory over Victor. It was a promise to her team, her city, herself, that authenticity could change the world. As she turned back to the kitchen, her heart was full. The legacy was growing, and its light would shine for generations. Emma Caldwell stood at the heart of Ember, her hands wrapped around a mason jar of iced tea, the clink of glasses and laughter filling the air. The former bookstore in downtown Asheville, North Carolina, was radiant, its exposed brick walls glowing under strings of fairy lights, its communal tables overflowing with farmers, artisans, and neighbors gathered for Ember's one-year anniversary. The scent of roasted chestnuts and lavender cream cobbler wafted from the open kitchen, where Miguel Torres, her co-executive chef, plated dishes with a grin. Across the street, the Blue Ridge Haven stood, its once proud restaurant, the Laurel Table, now a forgotten memory, replaced by guest suites. Victor Grayson had fired Emma, stolen her vision, and called her uninspired. But tonight, as Ember shone brighter than ever, Emma felt a joy that went beyond revenge. This was the sweetest victory, not just over Victor, but over doubt, fear, and the limits she once placed on herself. The anniversary celebration was a love letter to Asheville. Farmers like Marla, whose community garden supplied Ember's heirloom vegetables, sat beside potters whose plates graced the tables. Local musicians, veterans of Rachel Harper's Supper Club, played Appalachian folk tunes, their fiddles weaving magic through the room. Diners, from loyal regulars to first-timers who had driven from Atlanta, shared plates of cornbread-crusted chicken and apple stack cake, their chatter a symphony of connection. Rachel, ever the visionary, live-streamed the event, her number Emberglow hashtag trending nationwide as she posted, "1 year of heart, soul, and mountains." The mobile app, buzzing with reservation requests, featured a new section for Emma's cookbook, Ember's Table, a collection of recipes and stories that captured Asheville's culinary spirit. This night was more than a party. It was a testament to what Emma had built from the ashes of betrayal. The journey to this moment had been transformative. A year ago, Victor's dismissal had left Emma shattered, her dream of the Laurel Table stolen, her reputation at risk. But the vacant storefront across the street had sparked a fire, leading her to create Ember, a restaurant that changed its menu every 6 weeks to honor the seasons, that invited diners into its open kitchen, that taught preservation through harvest workshops. The mentorship program, born after Victor's desperate plea, had trained a dozen young chefs, including Sarah's cousin, who now dreamed of opening her own cafe. The scholarship fund with Warren Wilson College was growing, offering hope to hospitality students. Ember's impact rippled through Asheville, boosting farmers, artisans, and the community garden, proving that a restaurant could be a force for good. Emma's team was the soul of that force. Miguel, whose precision had earned him co-executive chef status, was her partner. In every sense, his wild ramp pesto a symbol of their shared vision. Lena, the line cook, had grown into a leader, her bold flavors inspiring the menu. Jamal, the server, made every guest feel like family, his warmth the heartbeat of the dining room. Sarah, the prep cook, crafted desserts with a quiet grace, her blackberry cobbler, a love letter to her roots. They had left the Laurel Table to join Emma, their ownership stakes a promise that Ember was theirs too. Tonight they moved through the celebration with pride, their laughter mingling with the music. "We did this," Miguel said, clinking his glass against Emma's. "All of us." An unexpected guest added depth to the night. Daniel Voss, the celebrity chef Victor had hired to replace Emma, slipped through the door, his presence a quiet shock. Emma had never met him, but his resume James Beard Awards, New York acclaim had once intimidated her. Now, he approached her, his expression earnest. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice low. "Victor sold me your concept as his own. I didn't know until I saw Ember. This is what I thought I was signing up for." He paused, then added, "I'd like to join your mentorship program. I want to learn from you." The words were a revelation, a final unraveling of Victor's lies. Emma smiled, extending her hand. "Welcome to Ember," she said, and the room seemed to glow brighter. Daniel's humility was a gift, proof that authenticity drew even the greatest to her table. Emma's announcement of a second Ember location, focused on sustainable seafood from North Carolina's coast, sparked cheers. The new venture, planned for Asheville's River Arts District, would carry the same spirit seasonal menus, open kitchens, community ties, but with a nod to the state's coastal heritage. The cookbook, set for release next spring, was her way of sharing Ember's story with the world, its pages blending recipes like smoked sweet potato bisque with tales of Marla's garden and her grandmother's Georgia kitchen. "This isn't the end," Emma told the crowd, her voice steady. "It's a new chapter." The applause was deafening, a wave of love from a city that had claimed her as its own. Emotionally, Emma was at peace. Victor's betrayal had been a crucible, forging her into someone stronger, wiser, more certain of her worth. She thought of her grandmother, who had run a diner through hard times, her hands steady as she stirred soup. "You build for the ones who stay," she used to say, her voice rough but kind. Emma had built for them, for her team, her diners, the young chefs in her program, the students her scholarship would lift. Revenge had been a spark, but legacy was the flame, burning steady and true. She had turned down franchise offers, choosing to perfect Ember in Asheville, to honor the city that had saved her. "This is home," she told Rachel one night, the two of them sipping tea in the teaching kitchen. "This is where I belong." As the celebration wound down, Emma stepped outside, the cool December air brushing her skin. The Blue Ridge Haven's lights were dim, its restaurant a ghost. Ember's glow, though, was eternal, its tables alive with stories, its future bright. She looked at the stars, feeling her grandmother's strength in her bones. Ember was her diner. Reimagined. A place where people found solace, connection, love. The scholarship fund, the mentorship program, the cookbook, the new location, they were seeds she was planting, a forest that would grow long after she was gone. Back inside, the fiddlers struck up a final tune, and diners pulled Emma onto the dance floor. She laughed, spinning with Miguel, Lena, Jamal, Sarah, Rachel, even Marla, their joy a fire that warmed the room. The chalkboard was covered with notes. Ember is forever. Thank you, Emma, each one a star in her constellation. She thought of the for-lease sign that had started it all, a symbol of loss that became a canvas for hope. Victor's betrayal had been a gift, pushing her to discover what she was truly capable of. The sweetest victory wasn't his failure. It was this moment, this family, this city, this dream, that no one could steal. As the music faded, Emma raised her glass. To Ember, she said, her voice ringing clear. To us. The room echoed her toast, glasses clinking, hearts full. She looked out at the faces around her, each one a part of her story. The fire she had kindled a year ago was now ablaze, and its light would shine for generations. Emma smiled, her heart soaring. The sweetest victory was hers, and it was only the beginning. Emma Caldwell's story is a tapestry of resilience, heart, and the transformative power of authenticity, woven in the vibrant heart of Asheville, North Carolina. A year ago, she stood in the dining room of the Laurel Table, her dream project for the Blue Ridge Haven, only to be shattered by Victor Grayson's betrayal. He fired her, dismissed her vision as uninspired, and stole her worker Appalachian, inspired menu, rustic, chic decor, and trained staff to launch his restaurant with a celebrity chef. The pain was raw, a wound to her pride and her soul, threatening to end her 15-year career in hospitality. But Emma, shaped by her grandmother's grit and Asheville's spirit, refused to break. From that moment of loss, she built Ember, a pop-up restaurant that became a beacon of community, a revolution in dining, and a testament to what happens when you choose heart over hurt. The journey began with a spark of defiance, ignited by a for-lease sign across from Victor's hotel. Emma, with her modest savings and unyielding resolve, signed a 3-month lease on a former bookstore, envisioning a restaurant that would embody Asheville's soul. She rallied a team: Miguel Torres, Lena, Jamal, Sarah, who left the Laurel Table to join her, their loyalty a quiet rebellion. Together, they transformed the dusty space into Ember, a place of communal tables, open kitchens, and mason jars glowing with wildflowers. Partnerships with Marla's Community Garden and local artisans gave Ember its roots, while Rachel Harper's Ember Glow campaign set social media ablaze. In just 10 days, Emma launched a preview supper that stole the spotlight from Victor's grand opening, its authenticity drawing critics, influencers, and locals who saw what the Laurel Table lacked: heart. Ember's rise was meteoric. Its seasonal menus, shifting every 6 weeks to honor Appalachian bounty, told stories of the land-roasted beets with sorghum vinaigrette, cornbread-crusted chicken with wild ramp pesto. Harvest workshops taught diners to preserve that bounty, forging connections that went beyond a meal. The mobile app, with its chef's journal blog, let diners reserve seats and vote on dishes, making them part of Ember's story. When Victor, his restaurant failing, begged Emma to return with a partnership offer, she refused. Her calm rejection, a declaration of independence. The Laurel Table closed, its space repurposed. While Ember's tables were booked solid, its impact rippling through Asheville's farmers, artisans, and youth programs. Bon Appetit called Ember a game changer. But for Emma, it was more a home, a family, a legacy. The 1-year anniversary was a celebration of that legacy. Farmers, artisans, and neighbors filled Ember, their laughter mingling with folk music and the clink of glasses. Daniel Voss, the celebrity chef who replaced Emma, joined her mentorship program, his humility a final unraveling of Victor's lies. Emma announced a second location, focused on sustainable seafood, and her cookbook, *Ember's Table, a love letter to Asheville's culinary soul. The scholarship fund with Warren Wilson College, the teaching kitchen, the supper club, with live music, they were seeds of a future where dining meant community, sustainability, and heart. Emma, once broken by betrayal, had become a leader, her fire kindled by the mountains and the people who believed in her. The lesson of Emma's story is profound. True success lies not in external validation, but in building something authentic, rooted in your values and the people you serve. Victor chased prestige, money, and power, but his vision collapsed because it lacked soul. Emma, with little more than her passion and a team of believers, created a movement because she built with love. Her resilience turning loss into opportunity, doubt into defiance shows that setbacks are not endings but invitations to reimagine your path. Her commitment to community, from farmers to young chefs, proves that success is sweetest when shared, when it lifts others as it lifts you. And her refusal to compromise, even when offered wealth, underscores the power of staying true to yourself, no matter the cost. For today's audience, Emma's lesson is a call to action. In a world obsessed with likes, followers, and quick wins, her story urges us to prioritize substance over flash. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an artist, or simply navigating life's challenges, ask yourself, what is my ember? What can I build that reflects my heart, my community, my truth? Start small like Emma did, with what you have: your skills, your relationships, your grit. Surround yourself with people who believe in you, like Miguel and Rachel, and invest in those who come after, through mentorship or kindness. When faced with betrayal or failure, don't let it define you. Let it refine you, pushing you to create something better, something true. Practically, this means taking risks, even when they scare you. Launch that project, share that idea, open that door. Connect with your community, local businesses, neighbors, causes that matter, and build something that serves them. If you're a young professional, seek mentors who value authenticity. And if you're established, be a mentor, like Emma, giving others the tools to shine. In moments of doubt, remember her grandmother's wisdom. You don't need permission to shine. Write your own story, not someone else's. And measure success not by wealth or fame, but by the lives you touch, the legacy you leave. Emma's victory was sweet because it was hers, built on her terms, shared with her city, enduring beyond her pain. As she danced under Ember's fairy lights, surrounded by her team and her people, she knew this was just the beginning. Her story challenges us to find our own fire, to build with heart, and to trust that the sweetest victories come when we dare to be ourselves. In Asheville's Glow, Emma Caldwell showed the world what's possible when you rise, not to win, but to create something that matters.